This episode includes a frank discussion about sex, relationships, and intimacy. Welcome to Unfiltered and Unbound. I'm your host, Kate Baxter. Today's episode is a particularly special one because we are talking about the most requested topic I have received from listeners, sex and intimacy in midlife. Every question I will be asking today has come directly from you, the listener. You have shared the things you are curious about, worried about, and in some cases, perhaps a little uncomfortable asking out loud. We received so many thoughtful questions that we may not get through all of them today, but we are going to cover as many as we can. And anything we do not get to may well become part of another conversation. So this is a deeply personal subject. So today is not about having a perfectly polished discussion. It's about having an honest, respectful, and judgment-free conversation about what changes in midlife, what women commonly experience, and where support may be helpful. So it's my great pleasure to welcome sexologist Naomi Hutchings to the podcast. Naomi, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here for this conversation. But before we dive deeper into the listener questions, tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do.
So, I'm a sexologist, which a lot of people, I think more people are hearing about now, but it's still a bit of a mystery to lots of other people. It really just means that I studied human sexuality at a university level, right? So, and I've been in this field for more than 20 years. So it's been interesting watching that change. And I've had a lot of roles and worked in lots of different spaces, but it's always at the heart of it is some kind of sex and relationships education. So, for example, I taught human sexuality at a university. I used to do lots of training and teaching with medical students, doctors, nurses, community workers. I did sex ed in schools, primary and high school. So now I pretty much do this where I get invited onto podcasts to have a yarn. That's how I like to think about it. Have a conversation. Sometimes I do education sessions, but it's mostly this, some media commentary, and then what I do every day is speak to clients. And so those clients are solos, single folks, couples, throuples. I have had a quad. So usually this is all I'm doing now, and as well as still training and constantly updating things because things are ever changing. But that's pretty much what I do now.
That's quite a depth and breadth of experience there across a lot of different areas. Now, we will jump straight into the questions because there are quite a few of them. So let's get started. How do I communicate sexual needs or boundaries without feeling awkward or guilty?
Yeah. So I feel like there were two things in there. When I read that question, and by the way, I'm just shouting out to whoever's listening, I even have put some notes here because I myself being nearly 52 in perimenopause, I keep randomly, I'll be in conversation and I'll forget a word. Like, it's ridiculous. So for the first time ever, I thought, okay, I'm just going to start with that and put some notes, just some starter notes. But yes, what I thought about this question straight away was the two things. One thing that stood out to me was feeling awkward, because I feel like there's something in that. The first part is that most of us, and what I see all the time is we didn't grow up talking about sex, relationships. And usually this is one of the things I'm saying to people in sessions. I'll ask them, tell me about, where did you learn about sex? What messages did you get? Did you have actual sex education in school? And so, I'm online and I speak to people around the world. So it's interesting with different ages and different countries, how they'll answer that. But usually this is a really common thing because a lot of people don't talk about it. So I think that's the first part, I suppose, is around without feeling awkward. And I suppose that's practice and unpacking that. And the only way we can, not be uncomfortable or is get comfortable with doing something, right? So it's practice. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't think necessarily most of us have found that an easy thing to do. Yes, I've been working this field for so long that I've had to work through all of that stuff. So I honestly don't. Like I do not get uncomfortable talking about sex and relationships, but for most people, they don't get the opportunity to do that. So I just want to put that out there. And that's practice, practice, practice. We have to be open and willing, vulnerable to have these conversations. So the other part then I thought about is like the guilt, which is what I hear a lot about a guilt around almost like feeling like putting their own needs first, like they're not used to doing that. So in this space, we're asking for something in a sexual experience. So quite often I'll hear people worried about hurting their partner's feelings. You know, a bit of like, oh, if I say that, they're going to be offended or hurt or think they're not good. And, you know, and so they don't say anything, which is not going to at all help the situation usually. So, yeah. So I talk about how do we do that? And the only thing is to do something different. So if you're in the middle, the question was around how to communicate. It's like, I think communication is important. But it's a practice, right? So this is all be an ongoing letting go of or willingness to sit with some awkwardness, but also the guilt stuff around, okay, so I might say I'll throw out, I use examples, I like to do it, but I mean like say, let me think of a common one, like somebody's feeling frustrated because they're with a person and they've ejaculated, they've come and they're not getting any pleasure and they don't know how to say that. So my conversation with them is helping them to say, well, if you don't say anything, this is not going to change. And so it's like a willingness, I suppose, to speak up and then and also a willingness that we don't know how our partner or partners are going to react, but if we don't do anything, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of that goes back to that whole how we're socialized in childhood to think about sex, particularly as little girls. And I think as we get into midlife, we start to challenge some of those narratives that we've been taught. I think you're right. You know, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and you need to have the brave conversations. And instead of waiting for someone to meet your needs, what better way to do it than ask for it yourself? If you don't ask, you don't get.
Right. And then, of course, we might hear a no about something, but it might be a conversation. And that does change. And again, sometimes partners don't know. They don't know either. They're just thinking, okay, well, this is okay. Nothing's being brought up.
And I think sometimes we tend to over-catastrophize the response where we assume that the person's going to get angry or say no. But it can be quite liberating when you ask the question and they don't, and you have that really honest conversation with the person. Yeah.
I think anxiety does that a lot, right? Anxiety takes us to the very worst case scenario. And sure, that might happen, but also many other things might happen, which is this beautiful conversation where you learn lots more things about each other, even if you've been together for a really long time.
Yeah.
We don't always know people's inner worlds, you know, there's their own world that they don't always share with us. So, but having a conversation, and I get it, you have to be brave. And if you're not used to that, and as you mentioned, little girls often we're very good at, we've been socialized to people pleasing, saying yes, smiling and all of that kind of stuff and helping everybody else if people are mothers, parents listening to this. So it takes practice and bravery to do that.
Yeah. Fantastic response. That's great. So we need to practice more and get comfortable being uncomfortable.
It's easier said than done.
What do healthy boundaries look like in a sexual relationship?
Yeah. Now, again, there's a few things in that. I also want to acknowledge that everyone's going to have different ones. Okay. So this is for when I'm speaking to this, it's about, you're going to have to personalize this, right? But I know that when people have, we have some boundaries in place, what that does is create this beautiful sense of trust, respect, mutual respect. And then most people would say that when those things are in place, that's a safe space, and then you can have a good sexual experience. That can be part of a good sexual experience, okay? And so my question then is like asking people, what are your boundaries, right? Do you know what they are? And I think about boundaries like sometimes, I suppose folks will talk about it like the lines that that we draw, right? You draw a line, don't cross it, right? And so if you're thinking about it in the sexual space, what is that? Getting clear on what your sexual boundaries are. Do you know what they are? Maybe you haven't thought about it. And also that this will look different for everyone, emotionally, physically. So I suppose that's something for people to think about. What is that? And a lot of people don't, and I do ask people again to think about other parts of their life. Like, are you good at doing that? Are you practiced at doing that? Putting boundaries in place? Because sometimes the sexual space feels just so loaded, so scary. So I'll say, can you start practicing doing that a little bit in other places? Like saying, no, I don't like that, or whatever it is, but in another place where it doesn't feel like it's the end of the world to do this, or, you might end your whole relationship by doing this. So it might be that you just get good at saying, hey, I'll come to your party, but I really don't want to stay out all night and I'm not having a drink. So I'll leave at this time or whatever. But getting practiced at doing that might feel a bit safer. So I usually say against do that. But of course, there's the other thing I talk about is consent, right? Just sexual. Yeah. If we're talking about the sexual experience, consent's always got to be there. And I like to talk about like the explicitness of consent, because sometimes, as we know, and we've had lots of conversations about this everywhere around, like this absence of no means a yes, when that's not always the case. So we talk about, I think we went through this phase of talking about enthusiastic. When I say phase, like in my field, and that we're talking about, getting people to be enthusiastically consenting to sex, which sounds fabulous too, but sometimes people aren't necessarily so enthusiastic, but it's around like making sure that the yes feels okay and not coerced. So that, I suppose, is part of like with the boundary thing around making sure that everybody has the right to say no, even if you've been together forever, even if you had sex the night before and you said yes then, if you're married, not married, but, like everybody has the right to say no. And so how do we work with that? And I suppose then there's the next conversation that goes on. Do you know like what your own limits are with sexual behaviors, specific sexual behaviors? Have you thought about that? These are things I get people to think about, because that's going to look different for every single person that I talk to.
I never really thought of it that way. You need to be practiced at setting boundaries in other areas of your life before you can start setting the sexual boundaries. That's a great take.
For some people, I just kind of I like to do that, because people I know, obviously I'm a sexologist, so I'm talking about sex all the time, but much of my conversation is trying to, I suppose, in quotation marks, normalize that we get very caught up with the sex stuff. And then sometimes this stuff is just everywhere, like in other parts of our life. So that's where, like, say I was having a conversation about pleasure and receiving pleasure and just letting yourself feel some pleasure. Sometimes I ask people what they're doing outside of their life, and I might say, so do you, what's your favorite dessert? And they might tell me something, right? I don't know. I'll just say a cupcake, okay? And I'll say to them, do you really like let yourself enjoy it? Do you just love, sit there with that deliciousness and eat that cupcake and enjoy it? Or are you sitting there going, I should, critiquing yourself and, all of that kind of stuff? Or where else do you feel the pleasures? Can you do that? So practicing, whatever that looks like, allowing yourself to sit in pleasure. So, or even just, I know for me, sometimes I wouldn't even pay to go and have someone give me a massage. I was always like, oh no, that's too much money to spend on myself, or, for someone to give me a lovely massage. It's like, where else do you do this and practice this? So I'll talk to people about, how do you feel? So when I'm talking about pleasure, so that people can then expand into their sexual space. So again, I'm always trying to get people to, if this feels really scary, next time, until I see you next time, go out and practice that. A little bit of, saying no, whether it's with your kiddies, your partner at work. What about work? Sometimes people don't speak up at work, and then they expect, okay, I'm going to speak up in a sexual space. Good. Yeah.
Great point.
It's got you thinking. So
it's got me thinking, and this is such a refreshing conversation.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
how do long distance couples maintain emotional and physical intimacy safely and respectfully?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And we're seeing a lot more of that too. I think people in long distance relationships. I'm trying to think of again, going back to when I had a long distance relationship before FaceTime, before anything. It was only just kind of some emails and how I did that. I literally wrote letters. Like I was writing letters. That was something I was thinking about. But I suppose if we're looking at this question, like the emotional and physical stuff. So I suppose that could be the sexual stuff. So one of the things I say to people is, and I suppose I'm looking at this question too, because it might be that someone begins the relationship as a long distance one, or sometimes people are in a relationship and then it becomes long distance due to career stuff or whatever, right? So my thing, I suppose, is getting clear of what does that look like? Having a conversation saying, we're going to do this. This is long distance. What are the expectations? And I think always checking in with the other person around what's their favorite way to communicate. Are they a big texter? Do they like to talk on the phone, hearing voices and things like that? Because you might be a person who's a frequent texter, regular texter, that's your thing, and they might not be. And then if you're doing long distance and you don't really know this, you could take their, again, I'm going to say it's in quotation marks, their lack of answers as that, they're not into me or something, when in fact they're just not a big texter. So I think there's conversations just around that. How do people like to communicate? Also, I do think for a lot of people, having regular check-ins or like scheduled check-ins, and again, whether we're talking about whether it's sexual or whether just to be connecting, because for some people, just knowing that that's going to happen, like I don't know, I'll just say your Friday morning, I don't know, depending on if you've got a big time zone or whatever, but you know that's going to happen. That might help you feel a bit better, be more regulated and not sort of worry, because some people are often in this limbo, like I haven't talked to them for a while, and it might be helpful, this regular date or chat to help regulate them and ground them. And if we're going to talk about, actually, I suppose with the emotional stuff, I do know there's some really wonderful apps, okay, like that I talk to my couples and others about, like, what was it? There was one about, it was a love app. I think there's Paired. There's just these apps where you can, and I'm assuming some of them I haven't test them all, so you can pay more. Some of them give you a free thing. But basically, you both are, if there's two of you, on apps. And then you can ask questions and there's all these prompts and things. And so that might help with the distance, and if you're feeling a little emotionally disconnected. So even couples who aren't find these quite useful. They'll just it gives people a little bit of space, especially if they're struggling with different ways of communicating, where they can take some time and answer, and then it prompts the other person. So those things might be helpful if whoever the people are asking this question, that can help to feel connected to, because you're not in the same space. Also, other things that couples on, there's so many cool things. And I think that happened after COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where people were like watching movies together, gaming together and doing all these things. I have some couples who say they really like falling asleep together. They're sort of chatting and hearing each other do that. Or they might have a special date where they're cooking, doing like mundane things. Or cooking each other's favorite things, setting the phone up if they've got that, and they're doing these everyday things that help them perhaps feel part of each other's lives as well.
Yeah, just remotely.
Yeah. So, and also like sometimes the mundane stuff, it might be, I had some couples telling me they were just putting the phone on, but not necessarily interacting, but they had it on, and then they're still gaming or doing something, that person's doing something else, but every now and then they go, hey, and they're just saying something so they can almost hear and see a bit of what their life is going on and feel part of it. So there's some things around that. But if we're kind of moving it to sexual stuff, if that was the question, again, that's always going to be what you are comfortable with, okay?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, younger folks, they've grown up with all this technology, right? I mean, again, I'm going to say, like, I'm nearly 52. Thank goodness I grew up without Facebook and had a teenage life without that. My goodness.
Agree.
Right?
Agree.
So, yes, absolutely. So, some people there's probably going to be very big degrees of comfortability here. So I just get you to have a think about what are you okay with. And so, people have phone sex. And as a sexologist, I call everything sex. I'm not specifically meaning one particular act. I'm calling all sexual stuff that you do, right? But that you might might take some time for you to feel okay doing that. But for a lot of couples, if they are trying to keep that sexual spark, whatever you want to call it, going, and they're really, distance can certainly do that to people. I do say that if you are going to take photos, you're going to send each other photos and things like that. And especially if you, like it's new, as in you don't know it, it might be different for someone who's been in a relationship for 20 years and then their partner's like, oh, I'm going to take this career opportunity over here. But if you're new and you're not sure, I do say to people, sure, if you're going to take that photo, fine, and obviously know the rules around you can't share that with anyone. That's illegal. But with each other, don't put your face in it. So some of my stuff is if you're okay with it, like you want to send parts of your body or doing something, just try to have the least identifiable stuff on there. If that's what you're ready, you want to do that and that's helping, and having some sexting or whatever, just do that. That's sort of like a safety thing. So you can do that. Say, sure, I'm going to send this picture of me, but I'll keep that part out where it shows my tattoo on my arm or my something around, and just in case, because we never, especially if it's new, someone can do something, right? So that's what I talk about. Just trying to mitigate some of that stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Oh, and I will say there are some vibrators and things. So I'm going to talk about sex toys. Sometimes couples can do that where there's a sex toy, say a vibrator, and the other person in the relationship can control it. So they might want to play. So there's some sexual play where they feel like they're almost doing this thing together, but they're not in the same space. So there's some things that you can do that. Just thought I'd throw that in there too. So there's some ideas.
Oh, yes, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Wow. This conversation is fantastic.
Good. Awesome. My favorite thing to talk about.
All right. What are the psychological roots of sexual anxiety, and how do people usually work through it? Now, I have a feeling we might have touched on this with question 1.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. It's a big question because, of course, I see so many people, and depends. You make a great point. That's exactly like how, well, one of the other things, my question, when I see the word anxiety, and people do that, they'll book into me and all it just says is in the bottom of the filling part, I've got sexual anxiety. I do say to people, are you anxious in other parts of your life? Because for some people, they've come to me saying they've got sexual anxiety, but in fact, they're anxious everywhere. Or they're really focusing on that. And then I realize, actually, they've got some generalized anxiety, which is impacting their sexuality.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure how to read this, because then there are some people, so they might be, it's only specific to sex. Okay. Anything talking about it, engaging in sexual activity. So I'll be usually working through some of that stuff. And absolutely, just like anything you're anxious about, people can work through this. We learn different strategies. We use the word meditation, and that is a practice. That's a white word we've given, a practice that's been around for a very long time. They're definitely good tools to have, a skill that you can use anywhere. There are many studies now that will show that can help people, like perhaps if it's a person with a penis and they're really anxious, and when you have a penis and you're anxious, you can sometimes lose erections very quickly, or it even can make you ejaculate really quickly. And so those things can help, and they don't cost money. Learning to meditate, but so I think it's like trying to, if someone comes to me, which this is common actually, I'm working around like, can we work out how to just help you feel less anxious in general? But if it is specific to that, then I'm going to be asking those questions, like you said, back at the beginning there around, tell me about who taught you about sex. Where did you get your messages? What do you think about sex now? Or what is it? What is causing you anxiety? And geez, there's so many things. Sometimes people are, give you an example. So they have grown up in a really, really religious space that has told them explicitly, you do not have sex, engage in any sexual activity until you're married. And that there's a lot of negative, scary kind of messaging around that. So then they get so anxious, and then then they're expected. So if they choose to get married, they're then expected that's just going to all go away and everything's going to be fine. And they're just going to be hanging from the chandeliers and having the best sex of their life, even though they've just grown up being told this, this, and this, and they're quite scared. So what that sometimes does, people get something called vaginismus, where they might try to have some penetration and literally it just nothing can go in. They can't have any penetration, and they might notice that with if they've tried to use tampons and things like that. So it certainly can get in the way. So I would be exploring what it is they're anxious about. Is it something specific, or are they anxious about showing their body, anxious about orgasm? So there's so many things there, but absolutely, when you have a conversation, sometimes that's enough for some people, but sometimes, it's a lot of unpacking to do. So yeah, absolutely. Depends. So that's questions depending on how the person talking to me, how I would answer that. But absolutely, we can work on that. And I do a lot.
That's interesting. And just a mental note, I will be recording an upcoming episode with a psychologist around midlife anxiety. So I think perhaps there's a partner question there that I'll be referring to her. I can see the correlation between, anxiety and midlife impacting other areas.
Perimenopause.
Yeah.
Because I was listening to a doctor talk about perimenopause. She said out of nowhere, she's never had it before, but she all of a sudden was so frightened to drive her car and she hadn't even put it together. And then I've then had conversations. So if we're going to throw that in, if you're you're in peri or post-menopause, really, what is it? Menopause literally means you've gone 12 months and 1 day without a period. But we know the peri can go for a long time, and often we don't even put the things that are happening to us associated with that. But so it might be a new thing that you're getting anxiety, and then it's everywhere. So there's lots of exploration that I'll do, but absolutely we can work on that for sure.
Yeah. The perimenopause, the gift that keeps giving.
Right?
Ugh. Coming up with new and
terrible, all the things,
symptoms.
Do you know that I worked in a sexual health clinic here in South Australia a while back that had been around for the 70s? But I was always around sexual health doctors, nurses. We're always together, right? But even then, so as I said, when I was working there, all I ever heard was the term menopause. So sometimes we would address that. So myself, I was also running training as well, but we often only use that word. So that the part that was most people were struggling with wasn't even talked about, as you know, until a few years back, really. So even in a sexual health space. So I was in a place that we were looking at the latest research and all of that stuff. It was interesting that wasn't even addressed. Yeah.
I'd never heard of it either. And most of my cohort hadn't. And it's been a ride.
Absolutely. And all you would maybe hear is the hot flush thing, or hot flash, depending on what you say. Not everybody gets that, but also there's all this other stuff that nobody was contributing to that or thinking that could be part of it.
Yeah. How do I build a healthier relationship with my body in intimate contexts?
Yeah. And again, so I'm going to go back. If I'm talking to people in this, I'd be asking them, what have you been taught? What's the kind of messaging? Did you live in a house that was, I don't know, super open about nakedness and body positivity and all of those things? And a lot of people won't answer yes to that. Or they might be okay with their body in a naked sense as long as it's not in a sexual sense. So, when you're in a space there is sexual stuff, that's when people, don't necessarily feel good. So again, I'm going to be asking people lots of these questions, but sometimes people have had babies, they've breastfed, they've done all these things and they've never even looked at their vulva. And most people actually didn't even get told they have a vulva. What they got told, if they did get told at all, is that they had a vagina. And it's like, vagina is not what you see. The vagina is inside your body. Actually, it's the vulva where your clitoris is. And most people didn't even get told they had a clitoris, So I'll be having conversations around that, like personally, before we then talk about how do you do that and then how that relates to when you're being sexual with more than just yourself. So talking about that. And there are some wonderful websites. Sometimes I get people to look at the labia library, where a whole bunch of people have put different, show the diversity of labia and what that looks like. Because when I used to do a lot of sex education with younger people, it was really interesting. I used to do this activity where I'd get people to name so I would say a name for a genitals or whatever, and then I'd get them to say all the things they'd heard about it. And quite often when I got to the penis bit, people would be like, that page would be filled up, or the board or whatever we were doing on. But with vagina, no one was really sort of talking about vulva, clitoris, or the words were negative.
Wow.
Yeah. And I see that a lot. So people maybe, especially people with vulvas who are wondering about their sexual pleasure and that they're not getting a lot of pleasure from, say, P in the V. So if they're having sex with someone who's got a penis and they're having lots of P in the V and that's not giving them pleasure, and they haven't even really understood what their body looks like, and that how they might get pleasure, or they haven't been able to share that. And I suppose we sort of talked about that earlier in that other question around feeling like telling that. I mean, but in fact, that's how most people with a vulva will have their orgasms is not through P in the V. So not through penetration. You wouldn't think that the way you would see if you see any kind of mainstream porn. You think that everybody's having orgasms with a penis inside them. Not at all. Like I'm talking 80%. 80% don't, which means that's more than the majority.
Yeah. I think that's really important to know, because a lot of women might feel inadequate if, I can't
orgasm that way. Like, quotation marks, normal. Yeah. Really, really important, because I often will get people specifically booking in saying to me, what's wrong? My wife, she can't come with my penis inside her. I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. So let's talk about that. But quite often he's thinking, what's wrong with her? Like, nothing's wrong with her. These are unrealistic expectations. Right? Yeah. And also, I don't have a penis, but for many years I've worked in this field. Many people with a penis tell me that's a really good way for them to ejaculate and get pleasure, by putting it inside a vagina or another body part. But that's really helpful for them, facilitates their ejaculation and pleasure, but not so much the person with the vagina. And most people, particularly in that space, if it's a man and a woman, will always end up doing that. The thing that doesn't necessarily, and of course I know there's going to be some people who say, yeah, that works for me, cool. I'm just saying a lot of people it doesn't. And that's why they have the orgasm gap, which you may have heard of, where they talk about the biggest orgasm gap. So it is between a man, so a cisgender man and a cisgender woman, biggest one, because of usually the sexual activity that they're doing.
Wow.
Big, right? A lot of people
learn
still so
something
shocked at
new
that.
every day.
Yeah. And I think when people know that can help them, because often they're just feeling dreadful. They're like, what's wrong with me? And or even I do get yes, perfect, absolutely. And even sometimes people with penises who can't. There are some people who have a penis and they cannot come by putting it inside something, whether it's a vagina or not, right? And then they come to me going, what's wrong with me? Like, nothing. So it's like remembering that we've been taught this idea about what's, quotation marks, normal sex, and then relearning that and letting that go and working on, pleasure being the thing we look at, and how do you get your pleasure, and letting go of these ideas, and they're helpful. Just like the same one where people are like, what's wrong with me? I can't come at the same time as my partner. Like, that doesn't happen much. No.
Yeah.
So I think the question was around building a healthier relationship with your body. So lots of things there around understanding, knowing what you like, practice, and solo.
Yeah. That's the thing I'm getting.
Own. Yeah, low sex, so that there's less pressure. So I talk to people about that, and a lot of people need a lot of work and permission to give themselves time to do that. But working out what you like on your own is very helpful, so that you can then say to somebody else, this is what my body likes and doesn't like. That could be helpful.
So you can communicate it to your partner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What a great response. Very wide-ranging.
Right, and this is what I mean. It's hard to do that. Yeah, so much to an answer, right?
There is. How does chronic stress affect sexual well-being?
Oh, a lot.
I think we might have covered this off with some of the responses that you have given.
Yeah. Sometimes I do find there are some people who are chronically stressed and they want to engage in sex because sex is a stress reliever for them. So, so if that's you, possibly not really talking to you in this space, but for a lot of people, stress is a break. And I'm using this language because I'm a very visual person, but I break like I'm talking like a car brake. Okay. So break.
Right.
To our arousal. So the reason I use that language, years ago, there was a book that came out by Emily Nagoski, who is a sex researcher from the States, who wrote a book called Come As You Are. And she's revised it, and I will still tell people about it because it is very helpful. But that was her studies of what the people in my field already knew, that there was this stuff going on around responsive arousal and spontaneous arousal, which is another conversation. But what I really liked there was she used these terms, brakes to our arousal and accelerators, right? The things that get us horny.
Yeah.
So going back to this, if you want to read that or listen to that book, go for it. She has written another book, but it's really helpful. But so I'm going to use that term. So what we know is that chronic stress is not good for our bodies in many ways, right? So why would, you already know, right? It's not good for us, stress. And so a lot of things don't work well when we are chronically stressed. So for a lot of people, of course, that's going to mean it's going to be a break to our arousal. And so if that's you, one of the things is like normalizing and having this conversation as if our bodies are machines and we're just going to be able to be sexual and be doing this. I mean, look at like the world that we live in right now. We already know people are having less sex, but I am not surprised by it because so much is going on. The distractions of the phones and internet, and just like shut the TV on and, put the news on, and wars and horrible things. And so we're in a financial crisis, layers, all of this. So I bring this up with my clients because sometimes they think, what is wrong with me? And I'm like, honestly, I think this is a pretty valid way that your body is reacting to what's going on.
Yeah.
I know we're not animals as in lions or whatever, but what I'm saying is even we know that an animal in the wild is stressed. They're not going to be having sex, right? They're on alert. Their body's on alert, thinking something's there. That's not what they're doing, right? So I kind of just bring it back to it's a fairly common response. So yeah, I think it's really important that you're like addressing that stuff, unless, as I said, sex is a really big stress reliever for you and that's helpful. But for the other folks, it's like, how can we look at, let's get your foot off some of those brakes. What are they? Let's talk about it. And then we'll go through that and have a conversation to see if we can get the foot off some of those brakes. And then you might be open to being sexual.
Like sex is a metaphor for life, is what you're saying, is whatever you're experiencing in other aspects of your life, it's going to seep into your sex life as well.
Most people it will. Yeah?
Yeah. Different ways people experience intimacy, and how do partners bridge mismatches?
Yeah. So, I think this is the thing, right? This is a very subjective question as well. I think there was, mismatched. So this is just one of the most common presentations that I see.
Wow. Okay.
So you would have, if anyone's heard me on podcasts before or on the radio or whatever, this is what I'm talking about a lot. And I will say the same thing, is that you are often not surprised that if you're doing life with someone that they might be not tired at the same time as you. They're not hungry at the same time as you. And so why would they be horny at exactly the same time as you?
Yeah.
Right? But people are absolutely horrified or worried when this happens. So you are two lovely individuals. Again, I'm just going to use this as two. If there's two people, I know I see people with more than two people in the relationship. And then, of course, you got to throw someone else in. So I'm just going to talk about it as if there's two people. And you're like, it's not uncommon at all, especially if you're past that beginning, that new relationship energy where you might appear to be quite mismatched because you've got all of that, exciting new relationship energy, which is an accelerator, right? Getting people horny because everything's new and exciting. You may have had sex before, but this is a new person and wow, everything's happening. Everything you do is exciting. You're each other's new adventures. So all of that's helping you. And then if you choose to then start perhaps being in a relationship or doing life with this person, this is when you notice the differences. So it's, again, a negotiation of two people around how do we deal with this difference with one of us possibly being horny most days and ready to be sexual, and the other want to have sex once a month, whatever it is, and trying to negotiate how do we come to something that's agreeable for whatever stage of life you're in. I think this needs to be revisited too, always around like checking in around, hey, you know how we said we're cool with 2 times a week? Well, I'm not anymore. Can we talk about how do we do that?
Yeah, good
big
point.
conversations, and just kind of not being so alarmed. That remember too, at the beginning of the relationship, as well as that new relationship energy, you may very well have been like 18 years old or and things are different. You might not have had, children in, body's different, all of these. Your life is probably different. So when people say to me, which they say a lot, is I just want to get back to what it was like in the beginning. And I'm like, well, okay, so you want to go back to being 18 again and not having so much money and being a student? I don't know, but it's funny. Right? And so it's kind of like, oh, but okay, you don't want any of that. Also, your body is different. There's many things going on. So it's like trying to be realistic about this. So let's talk about what can we do at this time in our life, whatever's going on in this chapter, and work through that. So that, just because you're the person in the relationship who's horny all the time, doesn't have as many breaks, doesn't mean you have any right to have sex every single day with someone, right? I totally understand you might want to and you're able to and you don't have a lot of breaks, cool. We don't get to do that to anyone. So it's like if we're living with someone and it's a monogamous relationship, because if we're going to talk about non-monogamy, then people often have other options where they might work through this difference. But if you're in a long-term monogamous relationship, which is probably what I see the most, then it's like, okay, how are we going to work through this? Because while we have sexual rights, everybody does. Just because you're horny every day doesn't give you the right to have sex with someone every day, whether you're married to them or not. So we've got to kind of work through a negotiation of how you deal with these two differences of one of this mismatch, which is, again, very, very common.
Yeah. Now, I think the next couple of questions are going over some ground that we've already covered. So I'm going to jump ahead. What are common causes of pain or discomfort during intimacy, and when should someone seek medical assessment?
Great question. So just heads up, I'm not a medical doctor, and I always tell people this, but I certainly see things. So I get a lot of referrals from gynaes, pelvic pain physios, and things. We also work together. If one very common thing I see is people who have pain on penetration. So I'm going to kind of ask them questions around like, is this only with a penis? Is this only, or is this when you maybe use tampons, things like that. So I'm kind of gathering information about this, that's not uncomfortable. So if we're, the other thing is, I'm not sure if you've heard of this big word, but genitourinary syndrome, menopause, so GSM for sure. Okay. So that just really, it's a big medical term. And again, I am not a medical doctor, but I certainly am seeing people in my personal life and my professional life because of peri. But basically that's just referring to changes, right? So genital changes. So you may notice because of the huge estrogen drop, you've got some itching that you haven't sort of really experienced, different to thrush. If people know what I'm talking about around thrush, this is a different thing where people often find they feel a bit itchy, burning, stinging, dryness, so vaginal dryness. So then, of course, that leads into some sexual difficulties for some people, particularly if all of their sex is around penetration. It's penetration focused. So they might get the pain on penetration or uncomfortable. Some tearing. Sometimes people find that because of the thinning of the labia. Decreased arousal. That's a bit of a thing. People say they feel like their orgasms have changed. And then the urinary stuff. Like, so we see frequent peeing or feeling like they need to pee, that urgency, right? Even leaking sometimes, and reoccurrent UTIs. And so, you know how I was saying before about breaks? Do you imagine these things are not really accelerators? These things usually are like things, they're not going to make you horny. Okay, so I just want to bring that up and say these are the things that you might want to go to see your gynae or, a medical professional to try some different things, okay? We also know that for those of you who might be not being sexual all the time, maybe solo. Having sex with yourself can be helpful because if you're, in arousal, the blood's going to be flowing and that's helpful. So if you're okay, and a lot of people, particularly those with vulvas, are not doing a lot of penetration because that's not always the way they get the most pleasure. But so I suggest if you can, to keep up your solo sexual play because that can certainly help. All of that can help. But seeing a pelvic pain specialist, there's some that's focus in this area. So go and do that you might get a lot of help with that. And of course, we know that menopause hormone therapy. So hormone therapy can really help that. But there are a bunch of different things that you can try with a medical person who might give you a list of different things to try. So also as well as the solo sex. And if you are having penetration, lube, insist on it. Right? It's like if you want to have penetration, use some lube. I'm always about the lube. Yeah. So there's some things there. Also, of course, I do see people, because I see younger people too who are not perimenopause, but could be endo, and unfortunately, what do we know about that is that many people don't get a diagnosis for years because misogyny in medicine, right? People are just expecting women to experience and deal with all this pain, and so it gets overlooked. So definitely that too. So I'm like, if you're experiencing that, go talk to someone. And if they don't listen to you, go to somebody else if you can, get a second opinion because it's not okay. And don't be afraid to ask for lube. And again, I could go into a whole nother spiel about also really reframing what sex means, like not focusing on P and the V, and that let's focus on pleasure. You can do that. And for those of you who are in long-term relationships, you can have sexual pleasure many ways. And by doing that, it means that for all of you, if you're a person who is with someone who has a penis and they might have issues as they get older or prostate cancer, the more you open your sexual script, the better. The better equipped you are to just go, let's focus on how to have sexual pleasure. How do we do this? What does that look like? Rather than this has to go there. And we're better to do that. More like, let's check in. What can we do today, tonight? And focus on the pleasure and how to do that. And that can be a relief also for people with penises who think that they've just got to turn up and have a hard penis. And oh my goodness, if they lose it, if they ejaculate early, that they're bad. So being kinder, creating a space there where you can do a lot of different things, which is, and you've got to, depending on who you're with, find out what that is. What does that look like?
Yeah. Okay.
Did I answer that?
Yeah. Yes.
Good.
A couple more questions to go. So how do common medications impact sexual desire or arousal?
Yeah, look, again, I'll be clear, not a medical doctor, but yes, many. I've had men using hair loss treatment. They're not being able to get erections, but for a lot of people using some of the SSRIs, they will do that. So like literally overnight for some of them, where they can no longer orgasm. It's just gone.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. And also to the point that sometimes doctors who have a person turn up who's got a penis and says, listen, I keep coming way too quickly, they will often give them some of those SSRIs that delay their ejaculation to help them. But I think it's just really important that people know many things, just like anything, can affect us in different ways. And so it could be that you haven't even thought about the fact that the medication that you're on is doing that. So yes, absolutely. Some people find their orgasms are gone. And this is for people who work and know what it feels like to orgasm. It's a little harder for me sometimes when I've got younger people who've been on medication from a young age and don't even know what an orgasm feels like. And then I'm trying to work out, okay, because I'll ask them, did you used to have orgasms? And they're like, no, I don't know. So, but yeah, absolutely they can dampen that. People have told me they feel like their particular contraceptive pill's done it, other people not. Some people, like, they get on the contraceptive pill, they're like, woohoo, I'm not going to get pregnant, now I feel good. So it's individual, but we'll definitely have a combo. And you can go to your prescriber and tell them this, because sometimes they'll say, hang on a minute, I'll try something else. And that might help bring that back. And because that's sometimes the reason people go off meds, but they don't say it. they're like not taking their meds because they're like, "Are you kidding me? I'm starting to feel better, and now I can't have sex. I can't get an erection. Or can't do this." So I'll suggest that they go and talk to the provider and see if they can try something else that doesn't have that impact.
Yeah, that's important to make sure that you're also having the honest conversation with your GP as well.
Yeah.
Because if it's impacting your quality of life, even if the
Oh.
medication might be working, but it's impacting your quality of life in other areas, then your incentive to keep taking that, as you say, is
lower,
well,
right?
you'll lose the incentive to take it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks for saying that, because I was just going to say some doctors, because I used to train doctors and nurses, they don't bring it up. They might not ask you. So even though, you might get that little, they all have the little packet in there that tells you every single thing that could happen. Sometimes people don't do that. So I do say, if you can be brave and say, listen, my orgasms have disappeared. And I know it's happened since I've used this, have a conversation. And I get it though, you've got to be brave. But I hope that your medical providers will bring this up, but I'll be honest, they don't always do it. So if you can, go back and ask, because it might just be as simple as swapping to something else. I know that sometimes that's not simple because people have, withdrawals and stuff, but going to something else, you then might still get the benefits where it's helping you with your anxiety or whatever it is, depression. And then you're also not getting the sexual, well, they use the term dysfunction. That's what it says on the paper. But so your issues around that. But if you can, bring it up, because it might be that. Mm-hmm.
Have the brave conversation. That's a theme.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do people explore sexual identity in a healthy, grounded way?
Yeah, good question. Again, I'm going to go back to, if I was having a conversation and you were asking me that, I'd be asking them, tell me what you've been taught about sex and relationships, because, whoa, some of the stuff I hear is not helpful at all.
Yeah.
Because some of that they've been taught, whether that's at home or media, whatever time of the year you lived in, went to high school, some of that stuff's helpful and some of it's hindering. So I suppose, working through some of that. Do you know your own body? Do you know what you want? Because sometimes that stumps people. They might have a lover who says, what do you like? Which is a great question. But sometimes it's like, shit, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that before. So working on what is a great, there's so many questions here. I'd say, tell me, what does a great sexual experience mean to you? Or what does that look like? What would that involve? And so I'm asking them those things, and they're like, oh, this and that. Or, they may have this idea, as I said, P in the V, better come this way. This has got to happen. And so we will spend time unpacking that and exploring that. And I hope helping people to really, really open their sexual script and not keep it so narrow that it's unhelpful. The word slut, that's a thing for a lot of women, that we're unpacking that, like letting go of the word slut shaming. Back when I grew up, that was a terrible word. I know that there's a whole bunch of women who have reclaimed that, which is fabulous, but I certainly know still some people will use this language around having, like, maybe they want to go and explore being sexual. Perhaps they've been with one person their whole life and they've just had a divorce or a breakup. And so those words are still impacting on them. So we'll spend a lot of time unpacking that so that they are able to see what does this exploration look like.
We'll jump to the last question.
We're getting to the end of time. Yeah.
We have been chatting for a while. When is it too soon to get into a sexual relationship with a new partner?
Good question. I get that a lot. And again, I am not going to tell you the exact who it is, because it's not for me to tell you. But what I want to say is that people ask me this all the time, like as if, I can give them permission. And I'm like, this is all about giving yourself permission. There used to be books about, you better do 3 dates and this, and it's just like, it's awful. They're not helpful at all. So I suppose I'm again going to be unpacking what they've been taught, what do they think, and then we'll let go. And I hope, and you said this word right at the beginning, but like free of judgment, because a lot of people, you might be sitting around with a group of your friends and they're like, oh, definitely, you better not have sex with them too soon, or this is going to happen. I'm like, I hear stories of people who've had sex on the first date and they're still married, happily married, together or whatever. And so, I asked them about what does that look like? And sure, if you need to, If you broke up and you want to go have sex tomorrow, fine, go do it. It's not for me to tell you that. And also sometimes people say, okay, cool, I would go do that. And they tell me, I've got a bit of regrets. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, sometimes people have regrets. It's like, don't have regrets. And I'm like, well, sometimes we do. It's okay because we've got to learn. We're constantly learning about ourselves. You might go, oh, now that I know better, I'll do better. I don't know who said that saying. I think it was Maya Angelou. But you sometimes find things out by doing. We can do all this reading and listening to podcasts now, self-help books, and they're fabulous. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but sometimes it's like we've got to get out there and do it. Right? Do it. And then we might learn some things about ourselves and go, shit, I really don't want to do that. Or, yeah, this is cool. So I'm not going to say, when is it too soon? Because you may have been with a partner for 10 years and hadn't had sex for any of that. Really, really want to do it. Okay. Yeah. So, but the thing is, I suppose, is having a conversation with the person you're about to have sex with, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are if you're dating or you're about to go on a date, having a convo if you can around, hey, by the way, literally to the point when I was dating after a breakup, I wrote this massive almost essay to the person saying, by the way, we're going to have a sleepover, or I'm coming to visit, but I don't want to have a sleepover. I wrote this whole thing of like, even if we're sexual, I don't want to sleep over. And so I kind of put it out there at the beginning so they knew I don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable having sleepovers right now and whatever. And, you're allowed to change your mind and have conversations and stuff. But, just practicing these conversations before they happen. So because people do, I know now with you're using online dating, you can put some things in your bio. You can put things in there saying, not interested in casual sex, or you are interested in casual sex, or, so you can put some things in there, but I think definitely having a dialogue and getting clear about what your expectations are. So, okay, we're going on a date tonight. Are you thinking we're having sex after this? And I know that, yes, some people would think that. So having a convo, and also particularly women who are going on dates with men, because we know statistically that sexual assault, so trigger warning, but this is a thing. And I think it's really important that you maybe, if you want to, think about changing up the way you date by saying, hey, I'll catch up with you first and we'll have a coffee. I'll just say a coffee before I go to work or something, so that you've got it out and you're in public and you've got these other things. So, that's probably a slight different question. But yeah, going into that about, and it's okay to say, hey, let's meet for a walk or something, but like in public around a space or whatever, that if you change it up, have an afternoon cafe where, at a cafe where like I'm going out for dinner. Because some people tell me they're very nervous about, they go out, say on a Saturday night, that there's almost this expectation that they're going to stay there and this is going to happen. And I hope people can, practice getting brave, saying I'm out, I would like to leave. But I do say if you have these convos, they can be helpful, or just changing up some of your dating just for safety, because unfortunately that's part of it too. But yeah, I'm not going to tell you, you decide, and it's okay to just trial and error. Okay, I want to do this, maybe not. But yeah, it's not for me to say, or your friends, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to have their own beliefs about that and their own judgment systems and values around, oh, you shouldn't do that or not. You decide, have a think about it.
Yeah. And I think it all stems back from those sort of childhood or girlhood rules that
yes.
are ingrained into us. So I think the takeaway from that is throw out the rule book.
Make your own rules.
Do what feels right for you.
Perfect.
And don't worry about what your friends are saying.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all doing different things, and that's cool for them. And it's about working out what you want, of course. And of course, when I say this, overarching is consent. If we're talking about sex, no matter who we're getting consent. But what I'm meaning is, you get to decide, not for me to tell you how often you get to have sex and what works. It's like, I'm asking you, you get to make that up. What does that look like? Do I want monogamy? Do I want non-monogamy? What, all of it, you get to decide.
This has been a great conversation, Naomi, and I think we could probably go on forever, but time is limited today.
It always happens. It's very, very rare that I ever have nothing else to say. I'm a chatterbox, but also it's this subject I'm very passionate about it, but also we always go, there's more we could say. So thanks for the questions.
No, well, that passion certainly comes across, and you've really given me some good insights, which is fantastic. So I'm hoping that the Well, I'm sure that the listeners will certainly get a lot out of this conversation. Now, if
I
any
hope
of
so.
them do want to reach out to you, how can they
Sure.
get in contact with you? And if
Yeah.
you've got details about socials, I'm happy to share that in the show notes.
Sure. Used to be the Australian sexologist on Instagram. It's still there. I just haven't been as active, but you can just go to my website. It's literally my name, Naomi Hutchings. My website's there, and you don't need to have a referral to see me. You can self book in. So there's a bunch of things. I try my hardest to get all my podcasts and radio things on there so you can hear me. But if you've listened to this, you would have got an idea. I'm just the same, whether you see me in a podcast, on the radio, or in a session. But yeah, you can go ahead and book and pick your time. And I see people all over the world. So yeah, because I'm fully online now. I don't do face to face.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. And I think perhaps that might encourage some people who would like to you speak to a sexologist that might be a little bit fearful of, turning up to someone's offices. So perhaps online might be the best way to go for them.
It'll be quite accessible because, I've got people, their kids are in the other room, they're having dinner and they're in the bedroom. People do it in their cars, their lunch break, at their office. I see people wherever. It's helpful.
All right. That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Naomi.
Thanks for having me.
For sharing your insights. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
This has been such an open, practical, and refreshingly grown-up conversation about something we simply do not talk about enough. And I think one of the things I'm taking away from today is that there really isn't one rule book for intimacy in midlife. Whether you're in a long-term relationship, starting again with someone new, dealing with changes in your body, or simply trying to work out what you want now, so much of it comes back to being able to communicate, set boundaries, ask questions, and give yourself permission to decide what works for you. I also want to thank everyone who sent a question in for this episode. We didn't manage to get through every single one, which probably tells us there is still plenty more to talk about. As always, this conversation is general information rather than individual medical or therapeutic advice. If you're experiencing pain, significant distress, or concerns about medication or your sexual health, please speak to an appropriately qualified health professional. I'll include Naomi's details and resources in the show notes if you'd like to find out more about her work. Thank you for listening to Unfiltered and Unbound. I'm Kate Baxter, and I will see you next time.